She doesn't look wealthy. That's the first thing you notice. The apartment is small, not cramped, just deliberate. The furniture is simple, the kind that has been chosen once and kept without explanation. No designer labels visible from where you're standing. No statement pieces. No evidence of the kind of spending that usually signals to the room that a person has arrived somewhere. And yet, there is something in the way she moves through that apartment that stops you. A quality of ease that has nothing to do with luxury and everything to do with something harder to name. She doesn't check her phone at the kitchen table. She doesn't rush. She opens a notebook, plain cover, ballpoint pen, the kind you'd forget in a drawer, and sits with it for about 20 minutes, the way some people sit with a morning coffee. Like this is the part of the day she was waiting for. You don't understand it yet, but you're about to. Because what you're looking at, though it doesn't look like much from here, is the daily practice behind one of the most quietly effective financial philosophies on earth. And the woman at that table isn't poor. She isn't merely comfortable. She has something most people in far larger apartments with far more expensive furniture don't have and have never had. She has no financial fear. Stay with this, because by the time we get to the last layer, you'll understand exactly why everything you thought wealth looked like might be the very thing keeping you from building it. The first layer, what she writes and why. The notebook she opens every morning is not a journal. It is not a planner. It is a Kakeibo, a household account book with roots in Japan going back to 1904, when a woman named Hani Motoko, Japan's first female journalist, created a system built on a belief that was radical then and quietly revolutionary now, that the act of writing your finances by hand, once a day, changes your relationship with money at a level no app ever can. Kakeibo is not a budgeting tool in the way most people understand budgeting. It doesn't automate. It doesn't categorize in the background. It doesn't send alerts. It asks you to sit down, pick up a pen, and answer 4 questions at the start of every month. How much do I have? How much do I want to save? How much must I spend? And how can I do better? And then record, by hand, every single thing that leaves your wallet. What this does to a person over time is not accounting. It is something closer to archaeology. You begin to excavate your own patterns, the Tuesday afternoon impulse, the stress spending that looks like self-care, the subscriptions that renewed 9 months ago and haven't been touched since. You can't hide from a number you wrote yourself. You can't scroll past it. It sits there in your own handwriting, asking to be understood rather than forgotten. The woman at the table has been doing this for years. Not because it's perfect, because it's honest. And honesty, it turns out, is the foundation everything else gets built on. The second layer, the apartment that doesn't explain itself. You look around the apartment again, and this time you notice something different. There is nothing here that shouldn't be here. Not in a sterile way. In a chosen way. Every object has clearly been decided on, kept because it serves something real in the daily life of the person living here. Nothing is decorative in the way that means guilty or obligatory. Nothing is held onto because it cost too much to admit it was a mistake. This is Mottainai made physical, the Japanese principle of refusing to let things go to waste, applied not just to the things themselves, but to the spaces they would otherwise occupy. An apartment without clutter is not an apartment that lacks things. It is an apartment that has been curated to hold only what is genuinely needed, genuinely used, genuinely valued. The empty space is not emptiness. It is breathing room. But there is something deeper underneath this, something that connects the physical space to the financial one. The Japanese concept of chisoku, knowing that you have enough, not as a resignation but as a practice, is visible in every corner of this apartment. She is not telling herself she can't have more. She is telling herself, with quiet conviction, that she has already looked, and this is enough, and she means it. This is almost impossible to fake. You can't purchase a Chisoka-style apartment. You can't buy your way into the feeling of sufficiency. It arrives only when you've genuinely stopped measuring your life against a standard you didn't choose. And the notebook on the table, the 20 minutes every morning, is what makes that arrival possible. Because once you've looked at your spending clearly enough for long enough, you begin to separate what you actually want from what you've been told you should want. Those are two very different lists. The third layer, where she learned this. She didn't read a finance book to learn this. She didn't watch a video or subscribe to a newsletter. She learned it the way most Japanese women of her generation learned it, at a kitchen table that belonged to her mother, watching a notebook just like this one being opened and closed with the same quiet consistency she now brings to her own. There is a phrase for this in Japanese, okay no kyuiku, financial education within the home, passed woman to woman, generation to generation, not as formal instruction but as witnessed practice. The daughter doesn't learn the rules. She absorbs the rhythm. She grows up understanding, without being told explicitly, that money is not something that happens to you. It is something you decide about every day in small amounts, consistently over time. The decision is the practice. The practice is the wealth. What makes this form of financial inheritance different from anything a textbook or app can offer is that it is lived. She didn't receive a formula. She received a feeling. The feeling of what a home looks like when money is handled with attention, and the feeling of what it looks like when it isn't. She learned by contrast, by proximity, by sitting across from someone who never once made money feel like a source of shame or panic. It was simply part of the household, managed the way the kitchen was managed, with care, with routine, with the understanding that small daily attention prevents large future problems. This is why Kakeibo has survived for over 100 years without becoming obsolete. Not because the method is sophisticated, but because what it builds isn't a budget. It builds a person who knows where she stands with money at every moment, not with anxiety, not with obsessive checking, but with the calm familiarity of someone who has been paying attention for long enough that attention has become instinct. Tell me honestly, were you ever taught anything about money at home? Drop yes or no in the comments. The answer might explain more about your current relationship with money than any tip ever could. The fourth layer, the moment before the purchase. Watch her closely the next time she's about to spend money on something that isn't a need. There is a pause. Small, almost imperceptible. A second, maybe two, where something checks in before the hand reaches for the card. This is not discipline in the way discipline is usually described: gritted teeth, white knuckles, the feeling of denying yourself something you desperately want. This pause is different. It's more like a reflex she has trained so long it no longer feels like effort. A quiet internal question: is this a need, a want, a moment of growth, or something unexpected? And does what I have cover it? Kakeibo divides all spending into exactly these four categories: needs, wants, culture, and growth. The unexpected. Not 30 categories, not a complex hierarchy, for honest buckets that force the spender to ask not just what they're buying, but why. And that why, written in a notebook at the end of the day, becomes data. Not numbers on a screen, data she has felt, processed, and recorded with her own hand. This is the part that most people underestimate when they first encounter Kakeibo. They hear, write down your spending, and they think, I already do that more or less in my banking app. But the app doesn't ask you why. The app registers a transaction and moves on. The notebook waits. It holds the pen out to you and asks you to put the category in your own handwriting, to physically assign the expense to a bucket, and in doing so, to own the decision that created it. You cannot write want next to a purchase and feel nothing. The handwriting makes it real in a way that a time-stamped digital entry never can. What this builds over months, and then years, is a spending identity. She is no longer someone who is trying to spend less. She is someone who has become genuinely disinterested in spending that doesn't serve her real life. The want hasn't been suppressed. It has been replaced, slowly and almost invisibly, by a different kind of want, the want for what the saved money can eventually do. The want for what it feels like to have reserves, to have options, to have the particular freedom that comes from owing nothing to anyone and knowing exactly what you have. The fifth layer, what happens at the end of every month. On the last evening of every month, the notebook opens to a different kind of page. This is not the daily record. This is the reflection, what Japanese philosophy calls hansei, the practice of honest self-examination not for the purpose of punishment, but for the purpose of improvement. She looks at the month. She compares what she planned to what actually happened. She finds the gaps, the category that ran over, the impulse she gave into on a Wednesday night, the unexpected cost she hadn't budgeted for, and she doesn't spiral. She asks one question. What specifically will I do differently next month? Not, I need to be better. Specifically, next month, I will bring lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Next month, I will wait 48 hours before any online purchase. Next month, I will review my subscriptions on the 1st. One change. Actionable. Clear. This is Kaizen, the documented Japanese philosophy of continuous, incremental improvement applied to daily money habits. Not transformation. Not overhaul. One better decision than last month, made consistently forever. The math behind Kaizen applied to money is not dramatic. It is devastating in the best possible way. A person who makes one small, specific improvement every month for 3 years has made 36 changes. Each one small. Each one built on the one before it. The first month, she cuts one unused subscription. The second month, she waits 48 hours before any non-essential online purchase. The third month, she starts bringing lunch 2 days a week. None of these changes feel like transformation while they are happening. They feel like almost nothing. But compound interest has nothing on this, because what compounds here is not just money. It is the identity of someone who makes better decisions consistently, someone who trusts herself with money, someone who no longer needs to avoid her own bank account because she already knows what it says. Most people never make 36 financial changes in their entire adult life. They make the same decision they always made, slightly more frustrated each time, waiting for a raise or a windfall or a better moment to finally start. She is not waiting. She has never been waiting. She is already in month 37. The last layer, what she has built that you cannot see. You're back at the beginning now. Same apartment, same notebook, same plain cover, same ballpoint pen. Nothing has changed on the surface. But you understand something now that you didn't when you first looked through this door. She is not building toward wealth. She is not waiting to feel financially free once some number in an account hits a certain threshold. She is already free, in the specific way that freedom actually works, which is not the absence of constraint but the presence of clarity. Clarity about what she has, clarity about what she spends, and clarity about what each small decision is quietly building toward, one handwritten line at a time. She knows what she has. She knows what she owes. She knows what she is working toward and approximately when she will arrive. She has no financial fear because she has no financial fog. The Kakeibo cleared it, not in one dramatic session, not in a month, but over years of 20-minute mornings at a kitchen table that smells like tea and the quiet particular to a life that has been examined and chosen rather than simply happened to. This is what invisible wealth actually looks like from the outside. It looks like nothing. It looks like a small apartment and a plain notebook and a woman who doesn't seem to be performing anything for anyone. It looks like a life you might overlook if you were scanning a room for signs of success the way most of us have been taught to scan. We look for the handbag, the car, the renovated kitchen, the carefully curated life staged for an audience. We walk straight past the woman at the table with the notebook and the pen and the 20 minutes of uninterrupted silence, because nothing she's doing photographs well. But you're not scanning that way anymore, because now you know what you're looking for. And it fits in the palm of your hand. A pen, a notebook. 20 minutes before the world starts asking things of you. Start tonight. Not to build a perfect system. Not to fix everything at once. Not even to feel motivated. Just to see. Just to write the number down, honestly, on the first page, and begin the practice of looking at your own finances the way she has always looked at hers, with calm, with curiosity, and with the quiet certainty that what you find there, once you finally look, can always be made better. One line, 1 month, one small refusal building into the next. That is the whole method. That is all it has ever been. If this shifted something in you, if you saw yourself somewhere in these layers, share it with one woman in your life who has been avoiding her bank account. She doesn't need a lecture. She needs this exact 20 minutes. This content is for educational and informational purposes, drawing on cultural traditions and behavioral patterns. It does not constitute individualized financial advice.